and I am back to talk about the Board of Ordained Ministry and the district's committee on ministry for the Texas Annual Conference administration under the United Methodist denomination in Houston, Texas. I have a long history with the Texas Annual Conference. I grew up in the Texas Annual Conference because my father, John Chester Dowden, was employed under the Texas Annual Conference, and my mother, Grace Dowden, was his wife. They were the losers responsible for my existence, and they were the most disgusting and repulsive people I've ever met in my entire life, and they were my parents. I was not my father's first victim. His first victim was his sister. My father was 7 years older than her. So when he sexually assaulted her, it was probably, excuse me, he was 7 years older than her, so it happened when she was a little girl or it happened when she was a teenager. And what happened was he tried to force himself on her and tried to force her to kiss him. And this was my father, John Chester Dowden, who was employed under the Texas Annual Conference administration of the United Methodist denomination because I don't know, maybe the Texas Annual Conference administration, I guess, likes to keep it in the family. I don't necessarily agree. It's not really my thing. But anyway, moving forward. So in 2017, I obtained a recorded conversation of my mother where I directly asked her if she had drugged me with codeine and narcotics so that I would not know that my father had been molesting me when I was a little girl. And her response was, yeah. She had absolutely no remorse whatsoever. She was very proud of it because she knew what she got away with. But she didn't know I was recording her stupid ass. And she didn't think anybody would believe me. But I don't really care who believes me and who doesn't. I know what happened, and I was there. So I found out about Jane Doe, who I later found out was Alicia Provost Whitfield. She is also a sexual assault survivor from Kendall Graham, who was a United Methodist minister that was employed under the Texas Annual Conference administration. And he lured her into his home so that he could sexually assault her. And his wife assisted him in luring her into their home. I consulted with the same attorney that she consulted with, and it was Harrison Fisher. I was desperate to get resolve and justice. And I understand I didn't really deserve that, clearly. And I deserved every bit of retaliation from the Texas Annual Conference administration. And so I met with Harrison Fisher on multiple occasions. When he was terminating our communication, I was able to get my paperwork back. And in my paperwork, he leaked a document of a letter that he wrote to Bishop Huey in 2011. I met with Bishop Huey in 2010 about my father. And Harrison Fisher wrote a letter to Bishop Huey in 2011 demanding $1 million because she had been sexually assaulted by one of their clergy, Kendall Graham. And I experienced retaliation from Harrison Fisher and also along with the Texas Annual Conference for exposing it. I also experienced retaliation because of their mistakes. I was the scapegoat, and I experienced retaliation because Harrison Fisher leaked a document that was associated with a multi-million-dollar contract between him, Alicia Provost Whitfield, and the Texas Annual Conference. In the news, Alicia Whitfield is listed as Jane Doe, and it states that she received a $25 million settlement from the Texas Annual Conference. And I went through retaliation and I exposed it. I was angry. And Harrison Fisher had warned me that the Texas Annual Conference would interfere with my custody trial. And they would, if he went to the media, the Texas Annual Conference would tell the media that I was mentally ill, and that he said that they would assist my ex-husband, Carl Edward Anthony, in getting our kids away from me. I guess because, the Texas Annual Conference likes child abusers. I mean, clearly, I guess they didn't think that's how I could spin that in interfering in my custody trial. And the Texas Annual Conference is not qualified to diagnose anybody or make assumptions about anybody's mental health. It's actually crossing a boundary. And I do have a mental health diagnosis. I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder in 2020. It was 2019 or 2020. And I still deal with it to this day. I have been exposed to repeated trauma, a lot of it from the Texas Annual Conference, and the retaliation that I received from them, even though I deserved to be retaliated against by them, because I'm a sexual assault survivor, was very traumatizing. But after all, I mean, clearly I deserved it. And Gwen Adams, who is in charge of the Domestic Relations Office, supervised visitations, also said to me that any allegations of abuse from me would not be taken serious, that any allegations of abuse from me were just hearsay. But if there were allegations of abuse from anybody else, that they would take it serious. So my well-being and mental health was clearly not a priority for the Texas Annual Conference. Their priority was to silence me, which is their priority for any victim of assault or violence by any of their clergy. They are going to protect their reputation before they are ever going to assist a victim or a survivor of abuse that took place within their conference administration. I also was forced into the supervised visitation program based on false accusations by my ex-husband. During those visitations, I had to visit my sons at St. Stephen's United Methodist Church, which is under the Texas Annual Conference administration, which employed my father, who was a child molester, and also employed Kendall Graham, who was a child molester, and also employed Michael Tabb, who murdered his wife in Troop, Texas. So clearly they didn't think that went through, because I'm exposing that as well. I also experienced more retaliation by being kicked out of the supervised visitation program for exposing the sexual assault, the history of the sexual assault within the Texas Annual Conference, and the fact that I was a surviving victim. And I also exposed the fact that I was sexually harassed at St. Stephen's United Methodist Church, in front of St. Stephen's United Methodist Church staff, and also in front of Domestic Relations Office staff. And I was also sexually harassed in front of my sons. Now, I understand I deserved to be sexually harassed because clearly I was a veteran. So, I mean, what does it really matter, right? if you sexually harass a sexual assault survivor. I guess it really doesn't, does it? Of course, that would be a question for the Texas Annual Conference administration, but they're too cowardly to respond to that question or answer that question. So that is why I am here today. I am also here to talk about the ordination process. And I'm also going to read another article about Michael Tabb. And the article talks about the murder of Marla Tabb and how Michael Tabb murdered Marla Tabb in a United Methodist parsonage. Now, these articles, do not mention the Texas Annual Conference. They don't state that he was employed under the Texas Annual Conference administration. A lot of people assume that United Methodist clergy are employed by the churches, but they are not. United Methodist clergy are employed by the conference administration that they are employed under, and they are appointed or assigned United Methodist churches within that conference administration. So Michael Tabb was assigned to First United Methodist Church in Troop, Texas, and this was before they separated from the Texas Annual Conference administration of the United Methodist denomination. All right, I'm going to get started. Okay. So this is page 5 of the DCOMS. Let's see. The basics for DCOMS, which is District's Committee on Ministry. And psychological testing results. One of the tools the committee will use during certification interviews to help discern fitness for ministry is a summary report of psychological testing results written by a professional evaluation team member after written recommendations and assessments are completed. In the Texas Annual Conference, the summary report assigns each candidate one of 4 color types. Green candidates demonstrate no psychological issues that preclude certification, commissioning, or ordination. Yellow candidates are individuals who, in the evaluation of the MAS, have some psychological issues that are noted as potential concerns for vocational ministry. For those individuals, the MAS will list recommendations that the candidate and the DCOM BOM, Board of Ordained Ministry, should pay close attention to and develop a plan of action. The plan of action should be documented and revised by the DCOM upon recertification or by the Board of Ordained Ministry before ordination. Reassessment by the MAS is not required unless specifically called for in the original psychological assessment. Orange candidates are individuals in the evaluation of the MAS are not currently psychologically ready to be granted the level of relationship to the conference to which they aspire. At the level of certification, The Board of Ordained Ministry strongly recommends that candidates who are evaluated as orange should not be certified by the District Committee on Ministry until the recommendations by the MAS as yellow or green have been reassessed by the MAS as yellow or green. At the level of commissioning, the Board of Ordained Ministry strongly recommends that candidates who are evaluated as orange should not be recommended for commissioning until the recommendations by the MAS have been satisfied and the candidate has been reassessed by the MAS as yellow or green. Okay? Red candidates are those who, in the evaluation of the ministerial assessment specialist, should not be in licensed or ordained ministry. Psychological concerns identified during the assessment are significant, substantive, to the degree that the MAS recommends this candidate discontinue the ordination or licensing process and explore other ways to bring expression to his or her faith. These candidates may be referred to the Psychological Assessment Committee of the Board of Ordained Ministry or the Executive Committee for recommendations to the full board. However, without further evaluation, red candidates may not be certified, licensed, commissioned, or ordained. Okay, I'm going to continue and I'm going to read another article about Michael Tabb. And as I previously mentioned, Michael Tabb was found guilty of the murder of Marla Tabb in Troop, Texas. Okay, I read that one, I think. Let's see what this one is. Okay, this one I haven't read. Okay. Here we go. All right, so Mike Tabb, Marla Tabb, killer clergy digs up Troop, Texas, murder of preacher's wife on investigation, discovery. Published on September 16th, 2016 at 9:56 a.m. Eastern Time. Written by Tracy Reyes. Mike Tabb, the Troop, Texas preacher who murdered his wife, Marla Tabb, almost 15 years ago, is the featured murder story on Investigation Discovery's hit show, Clergy Killer. The newest Killer Clergy episode, titled Thou Shalt Not Kill, is a stirring account of a religious couple who appeared to be faithful servants of God until a secret sex life is revealed that threatens to break up a marriage and spin the small church-going community into a tailspin of lies, deceit, and murder. And this was a United Methodist clergy that was employed under the Texas Annual Conference administration and placed on assignment at First United Methodist Church in Troop, Texas. Marla Tabb went from military wife to preacher's wife, but what should have felt like a sanctuary as she moved inside her church home turned out to be her murder suite. After her pastor husband, Mike Tabb, found her dead in the bathroom on the bathroom floor just 6 weeks after giving birth to her second child, according to the Amarillo Globe News. An autopsy report concluded that the preacher's wife was beaten to death with a blunt object. Mike Tabb, told investigators that he had been out that day but returned home, where he found his wife, Marla Tabb, in a pool of blood. The front door, he said, was slightly opened. Seasoned detectives could tell by the scene that 35-year-old Marla Tabb had fought for her life against the attacker. News of the murder rocks the entire community of Troop. Mike and Marla Tabb had been in Troop, Texas for only 2 months after leaving the military. Righteous preacher he wasn't. Right away, 41-year-old Mike Tabb, an upstanding Methodist minister, didn't seem to be a likely suspect. But after all other leads were exhausted, investigators circled back to Mike, where they learned that the marriage between the couple was not as it seemed. It never is. There were two sides to Marla Tabb. Some didn't consider her a friendly person at all, stating that she didn't have the temperament and the caring personality for most preachers' wives. But that doesn't justify the fact that she was murdered. Others say that she seemed like a loving wife who was devoted to her church and to her husband, according to Houston Chronicle. Mike Tabb described his wife in the following manner in a newsletter to the church. In a church newsletter, the week before her death, Tabb described her as a gifted musician and singer who surrendered to a call to ministry when she was a 15-year-old high school student in Beaumont. She had performed in the musical production Texas for 3 seasons, he wrote, and was a church music and youth director while attending Baylor University. She continued her missionary work as they traveled to Japan, and she became fluent in the language of that country. As police looked further into the couple's marriage, it came to light that Marla Tabb often belittled and talked down to her husband in public, something that several people witnessed during the course of the marriage. Authorities say that Marla Tabb hated living in Troop, and she grew disgusted with her husband's ungodly ways. It turned out that Michael Tabb was struggling with inner demons that impacted his relationship with his wife and his ability to run the congregation. The investigation revealed that Mike Tabb often binged on alcohol, wasn't as good at his job as pastor of the church as he had a liking for strip clubs and sex with women outside the marriage. For someone like Marla, she would have considered her husband's behavior to be an embarrassment. Investigators theorized that Marla Tabb threatened to reveal Mike Tabb's double life to the church, leading Mike Tabb to silence her for good. And that's not a surprise to me. Evidence showed that Mike and Marla Tabb had an altercation in the bedroom where investigators believe he unleashed a torrent of anger, resulting in his wife's beating death. Then he tried to cover his tracks by thoroughly cleaning his truck. However, Mike Tabb forgot the role DNA evidence would play in connecting him to the killing. In the end, police got all they needed to make the arrest and change the small town preacher and charged the small town preacher with murder. To see how Texas law enforcement officials solved the case of Mike and Marla Tabb, follow along this Friday, September 16th at 9 p.m. Central on Investigation Discovery. Okay. So even if Marla Tabb was not a nice person, it did not justify the murder. Michael Tabb was employed under the Texas Annual Conference Administration. And he certainly wasn't the first clergy that was employed under the Texas Annual Conference Administration that was abusive. And my question would be, when did the selection process and the ordination process begin to fail, affecting the district on committee ministry and the Board of Ordained ministry, affecting their ability to have discernment on selecting clergy? Also, abusers can be very cunning and very manipulative. And they can pass psychological evaluations. Upon reading what the standards are for psychological evaluations, it sounds hypocritical. It especially sounds hypocritical knowing that the Texas Annual Conference doesn't have a problem slandering and attacking the mental health of a sexual assault survivor from one of their clergy without even offering a psych eval and the type of counseling that she would need. Instead, what they do is inflict more trauma on said sexual assault survivor, which was myself. Further damaging my mental health. And yet they have all of these requirements for clergy to follow. All of that is a contradiction in itself. And the Texas Annual Conference needs to take a serious look at how they treat victims of abuse from their clergy and their selection process regarding clergy candidates for ordination.